It is the night of June 5th, 1944. Along the coast of Normandy, the sea is angry. Wind tears at the grass on the dunes. Rain hammers the concrete roofs of German bunkers. Inside, young soldiers sit by candlelight, playing cards, writing letters home, listening to the storm roar outside. They are not afraid tonight. They have been told there is nothing to fear. The chief weather officer of the German Air Force has said it plainly. No invasion fleet could survive a storm like this one. Not for days, maybe not for a week. And the man in charge of these very defenses, Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, has believed the forecast so completely that he has left his post. He is driving home across the German border to celebrate his wife's birthday. So tonight, the guns are quiet. The beaches are empty of urgency. Somewhere out in that black, churning channel, though, something enormous is already moving toward the coast. And by morning, this quiet night will feel like a memory from another life. This is a story most people already know. We have seen the films. We have heard the names: Omaha, Utah, Gold, Juno, Sword. We know it as a story of courage, of young men storming beaches under fire, of a war turning at last toward its end. But there is another side to that story, a side rarely told. What was happening behind that wall, inside those bunkers, in the headquarters far from the coast, where generals argued and waited and slept. The real question of this day is not how the Allies managed to get ashore. Thousands of ships, tens of thousands of soldiers, total control of the air and sea. Of course they could get ashore. The real question is this: how did the mightiest army in Europe, defending what it called an unbreakable wall, fall apart in less than one single day? To understand that collapse, we have to go back several months, to a quiet, bitter argument that had already decided the fate of this battle before a single shot was fired. It was a disagreement between two of Germany's finest commanders, two brilliant minds, two completely different ideas of how to stop an invasion. The first man was Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt, commander of German forces in the West. He was old, proud, and shaped by an older kind of war. Von Rundstedt believed the coastline itself was not something to defend inch by inch. Instead, he saw it as bait. Let the enemy land, he said. Let them come ashore, get tired, spread thin, and stretch their supply lines across the beaches. Then, and only then, strike back, hard and all at once, with Germany's most powerful weapon, its tank divisions, held safely inland, ready to crush the invaders in one massive counterattack. It was the same plan that had worked so well 4 years earlier, when German tanks tore through France in weeks. A plan built on patience, a plan built like a chess game. The second man saw it completely differently. Field Marshal Rommel had commanded troops in North Africa, and there he had learned something that haunted him. He had watched his own tank columns, some of the finest in the German army, get hunted and destroyed, not by enemy tanks, but by enemy planes. He had seen what happens when an army loses control of the sky. So when Rommel inspected this so-called Atlantic Wall, he did not see a fortress. He saw a thin shell of concrete and scattered mines, a wall that looked far stronger in photographs than it ever would in reality. He believed that if the Allies were ever allowed to fully land, if they were given even a single day to dig in, it would already be too late. Their planes would rule the sky above the beaches, and no counterattack from inland would ever reach them in time. His answer was the opposite of von Rundstedt's plan. Move the tanks to the coast now, he argued. Hide them close to the beaches, in villages and forests, so they could strike within minutes, not hours. The first day, he wrote in a warning to headquarters, would decide everything. There would be no second chance. Two brilliant generals, two completely opposite plans. And only one man could decide between them: Adolf Hitler. He chose neither plan, and both Rommel was given command of only a few tank divisions near the coast, but the most powerful ones, the strongest, best-equipped divisions in the entire German army, were held back as a central reserve, placed inland, just as von Rundstedt wanted. Yet those tanks were not given to von Rundstedt either. They could only move with Hitler's own personal permission. It was a compromise built to please everyone, and in doing so, it broke everything. The man defending the beaches did not have enough tanks. The man commanding the region could not move the ones that mattered, and any order to strike back would have to travel from a bunker in Normandy to a headquarters in Paris, all the way to Hitler himself, wherever he happened to be. In a battle where minutes would decide history, the German command had built itself a system that guaranteed hours of delay. And out in the Channel, hidden behind the storm, that history was already on its way. Just after midnight, the phones start ringing. At the headquarters of the German 84th Corps, reports come flooding in, confused, frantic, impossible to piece together. Parachutes spotted over one town, gliders landing near a river bridge miles away, soldiers seen falling from the sky in a dozen different places at once. It does not look like an invasion. It looks like a haunting. What the German commanders do not know yet is that many of these soldiers are not soldiers at all. They are dummies, explosive decoys dropped by the hundreds across the countryside, designed for one purpose only: confusion. And it works perfectly. The pattern makes no sense because it is built to make no sense. General Erich Marx stares at his map, covered in scattered pins that form no clear line of attack. Everything in his training tells him this must be a trick, a diversion to pull his reserves away before the real invasion lands somewhere else entirely, somewhere closer to Calais, where German intelligence has long expected the true attack to come. So he waits. He does not dare move his one nearby tank division into the dark countryside, chasing what might only be shadows. Up the chain of command, the confusion spreads. At 7th Army headquarters, generals are just as unsure. In Paris, at von Rundstedt's staff office, the first reaction is almost dismissive. A large raid, they think, not the main invasion. Nobody yet believes the true blow has landed. And while the generals argue over what they are seeing, the men in the coastal bunkers begin to hear something new. Not the buzz of aircraft this time. A low, deep, endless rumble, rolling in from the darkness of the sea, growing louder with every passing minute. By dawn, the mystery is over. In a bunker overlooking a stretch of sand the Allies call Omaha Beach, a young soldier presses his eye to the observation slit. The morning mist is lifting off the water, and where the horizon should be, there is nothing but ships, an endless gray wall of steel stretching from one end of the sea to the other, farther than the eye can follow. One officer watching from further inland would later say it did not look like a fleet at all. It looked like an entire city had risen out of the ocean overnight. Before the shock can even fully register, the shelling begins. Warships out at sea open fire together, a wave of explosions rolling across the coastline. Inside the bunkers, the ground shakes without stopping. Dust fills the air. Phone lines are cut. Radios go dead. Within minutes, a wall meant to work as one connected system has been shattered into dozens of isolated points, each one cut off, each one alone. Miles inland, near the city of Caen, the tank crews of the 21st Panzer Division hear the thunder rolling in from the coast. This is the moment they trained for. But the order to move does not come. Their commander waits and waits, trapped inside a system that cannot make a fast decision. It is nearly 9 in the morning, hours after the first shells fell, before permission finally arrives for even a small, limited attack. When the tanks finally roll forward, for one brief moment, it almost works. They push through, they reach the coast, they even glimpse the English Channel between two of the landing beaches. It looks for just a moment like the plan might hold. Then the sky turns against them. German tank crews have a name for what comes next. A high, screaming sound that every soldier on this front has learned to fear. Fighter planes appear overhead, and there is nothing the tanks can do about it. Their weapons point forward, not up. One by one, they are picked off from above. By evening, the attack that was supposed to turn the tide has been broken apart before it ever really began. The lesson is simple, and it is final. Without control of the sky, the tanks cannot move, cannot fight, and cannot survive. Meanwhile, further inland, an even more powerful tank division sits completely still. Its commander has spent the entire morning on the phone, begging for permission to move. His request travels up one level, then another, then another. Corps, Army Group, headquarters in Paris, each level agreeing something must be done, but none of them holding the actual authority to give the order. The final decision can only come from one place, Hitler's own personal headquarters, far away in the mountains of southern Germany. And there the officers on duty face an impossible problem. Hitler is asleep. He has left strict orders not to be woken. No one dares disturb him, not even with the fate of the entire Western Front hanging in the balance. So they wait. And while they wait, some of the most powerful tank divisions in the German army sit idle, engines cold, crews staring down empty roads, wondering why no order ever comes. Back on the beach, one young machine gunner keeps firing, hour after hour, holding his small stretch of sand almost single-handedly. For a long while, it feels like it might even be working. But as the day wears on, something changes in him. For every soldier who falls, more appear behind them. The tide never stops. It is not an army he is fighting anymore. It is an ocean. By the time the sun begins to set, the beaches are no longer contested. The Allies are ashore, and they are staying. The Atlantic Wall, the great fortress Germany had promised its people was unbreakable, has been broken in less than a single day. As night falls on June 6th, the full weight of the disaster finally reaches the highest levels of German command. The reports are no longer confusing. They are simply terrible. Entire coastal positions gone, communications destroyed, an enemy not just ashore, but digging in, building a wound in the line that cannot be closed. A telephone call connects two men on opposite ends of the German war machine. On one end sits General Alfred Jodl at Hitler's headquarters, calm and careful, a man who deals in reports and numbers. On the other end is Field Marshal von Rundstedt himself, 70 years old, the most senior commander in the West, a man who has spent his whole life inside the traditions of the German army. Jodl lays out what is known. The beaches are lost. The counterattacks have failed. The enemy controls the sky completely, and more ships keep arriving every hour. Then he asks the question that hangs over the entire war effort that night. What should we do now? Von Rundstedt's answer is not a battle plan. It is barely even a military answer at all. Make peace, he says. What else can you do? It is a stunning thing to hear from this particular man. Not a nervous junior officer, not a frightened soldier, the single most respected field marshal in the entire Western Command, saying openly, on the very first night of the invasion, that the war is already lost. He has seen the evidence with his own eyes, the endless fleet, the total command of the sky, the failure of every plan his own side had prepared. His answer is not born of fear. It is simply what the facts, added up honestly, tell him. But Hitler is not a man who listens to facts like this. To him, this kind of honesty sounds like betrayal. Retreat sounds like weakness. And so, instead of accepting what his own field marshal has told him, he chooses the opposite path entirely. He issues an order. No retreat, no withdrawal. Every position must be held, no matter the cost. For weeks, that single order forces German units to stay and fight in places they cannot hold. forbidding any pullback that might have saved them, forbidding any retreat that might have kept the army whole. It feels, at first, like stubbornness. It will turn out to be something closer to a death sentence. By August, 2 months after that first long day on the beaches, the price of that order finally comes due. A last desperate German counterattack fails near the town of Mortain, and with that failure, Allied forces close in from 2 directions at once, like 2 great arms swinging shut. Nearly 100,000 German soldiers, 2 entire armies, find themselves trapped inside a shrinking pocket of French countryside near a town called Falaise. The only way out is a narrow strip of land, barely 20 miles wide, between 2 small towns. Allied artillery, sitting on the hills above, can see almost the entire length of it. The soldiers trapped inside give it a name of their own, the Corridor of Death. What happens next is not really a battle anymore. It is simply an escape, and for most, it fails. One officer trapped inside later describes the roads themselves as barely recognizable. Burning vehicles, overturned wagons, wreckage stacked upon wreckage, the wounded and the dead lying together in the wreckage of what used to be an army. A tank crewman remembers trying to steer around the debris, only to find his path blocked by the bodies of horses, the very animals that had been pulling German supply wagons since the beginning of the war. Above it all, planes circle constantly, striking anything that still moves on the roads below. Inside that pocket, rank stops meaning anything. A general and a teenage soldier scramble over the same ditch together. An officer from an elite unit abandons his burning tank and runs on foot alongside ordinary infantrymen he has never met. There is no more army here, not really, only people trying to survive. By the 21st of August, the gap is closed completely. The trap has shut. Tens of thousands of soldiers are captured. Thousands more do not make it out at all. The few who do stumble across the river beyond the pocket are barely recognizable as an army. Men without weapons, without units, walking wounded in every sense of the word. It is worth remembering how this all began. 10 weeks earlier, a soldier stood in a dry, quiet bunker, protected by concrete walls and a raging storm, completely certain that he was guarding the gates of an unbreakable fortress. By the end of August, that same kind of soldier, if he survived at all, was walking out of a French field as a shadow of what he had been, not defeated only by the size of the invasion fleet or the power of Allied planes, though both mattered enormously. He was defeated by something built long before the first shot was ever fired. 2 brilliant commanders who could never agree, a compromise that pleased no one and protected nothing, and a chain of command so fragile that it could be broken by something as small as one man's sleep schedule. In the end, the Atlantic Wall was never truly stormed by force alone. It was exposed. Its foundations, it turned out, had always been made of sand. The German army in Normandy was not simply outfought. It was outthought, outorganized, and in the end, defeated as much by its own leadership as by the army standing against it on the beaches.